क्या आपने कभी ऐसे रिटायरमेंट की कल्पना की है जो कॉलेज लाइफ की तरह हो? वही टेंशन फ्री लाइफ, मौज मस्ती और हम उम्र दोस्तों का साथ, एक खूबसूरत जगह। आप अपनी जिंदगी के सहेजे हुए खूबसूरत पलों को दोबारा
Moved from hospital to hospital, doctors to doctors, ended up until the day that all through and through I was kept abreast of what's going on, but not the severity to the point, because the minute certain things were brought up, I would jump up and say, but why? Why is this being done like that? Why did you ask about this? Did you ask about that? It was a huge stress for my family to actually be the speaker in between. And so they all dropped out of those sort of communication between me and my mom or whoever that was. And so then finally I was told that mom was actually pretty unwell. By the time I got to her bedside, she was at the stage that she could not have reversed any of her medical condition. That was the time that I was asking the medical system there, saying, what are we planning to do? What is the plan of management with mom's care? And they said, well, as you know, what's your background? You sound like a medical person. Are you? And I said, yes, I'm such and such and from such a place. Well, let me tell you first thing, this is not America, this is not Australia. Get that out of your mind, number one. Number two, do you think we are gods? We are not. So what we have done for your mother is all we have done, what we will be doing to others. We have done everything. You can take her home if you want to. So what does that mean? Well, there's nothing that you can do. Oh, well, have you said this to the rest of the family? Have you conveyed this message to the rest of the family who's been here with her all through the time? They said, no, there's no need. And I said, why? How come? Oh, she's in an intensive care unit requiring no oxygen at that point in time, no monitoring required at that point in time, but she's in an intensive care unit. Intensive care unit, to me, my understanding, and Adit, correct me if I'm wrong, is a place where you would need very intense monitoring of their heart functions, their lung functions. They are supported with medications, with devices that are very invasive, sometimes non-invasive, but they're closely monitored. This is a mother who is ailing and screaming and yelling, going out of her mind, and being constrained in that, caught with the sides being pulled up, with the hands being restrained, and she's in an intensive care unit. I was really shocked to see that she was in an intensive care unit where she was treated like as if she was in an aged care center in a psychiatric unit. And so the first thing was that I go up to them saying that, please do not treat my mom like this. If you are running out of options, be open and frank with my mom and with the family. We are happy to take her home. And that is when I broke out this news to my family, saying that I don't think we need her. It's about that time that we draw back and then see what we need to do. So I had to be the person to tell the rest of the family that mommy is not going to make anymore, that we need to palliate her, that we need to keep her comfortable. Nobody in the family accepted. No one liked it. They thought I was arrogant, that I was authoritative, that I had the knowledge base with which I was trying to cut short my trip or whatever that is. A lot of dynamics. And so I had to tell that to my own mom, saying that, mommy, everyone needs to reach heaven one day. You tell me that. And that time is up for you by the looks of it. We need to go home. We look after you at home. We will get the doctors come home. We'll care for you at home. Mom never trusted. And I said, we will do everything that we can to keep you comfortable. Whether you will be able to walk around the block and see to your second grandson's or 10th grandson's wedding, or some other occasion that you're talking about, I'm not going to promise you that far, but we need to now get out of the hospital and see to a comfortable state. And by then, mom had lost her mental faculties quite a lot. We had to somehow wind her up from the hospital and then bring her home. That's because at that point in time, I was asking the doctors, I'm worried about taking my mom home because she had a tummy that was that pregnant. She was having such a heavy breathing because of the tummy, because of liver failure. There's no way that she was getting any relief from her symptoms. And when I approached the doctor saying that, what are we going to do about this when I take mommy home? Well, you deal with it because you want to take her home. I said, no, I don't want to take her home against your advice. I want your support and advice. But what we are doing here in the hospital, giving her blood tests every day, x-rays every day, which are of no utility to her management. And the family are expected to pay 75,000 every 2 days. The family are running to financial loss like no tomorrow. Everyone is going through a huge stress. Can we just minimize all this? Can you please direct me to a palliative care center? Well, we don't have one here. So went around in Bangalore like a headless chicken, pretty much from doctors to doctors, taking my mom's records even before I could take her home, because I don't know if mommy would be able to have any pain relief, because I don't have one. We don't get those sort of pain relief out in the pharmacies. So went with mommy's records to many doctors. And some of the doctors said, looking at that, asked me, pray to God. And I said, are you a doctor for telling me to pray to God? My mommy said that. My mommy used to say, pray to God every day. She was not a doctor. As a doctor, what are you meant to be doing? You're not meant to be, I expected something else from you. But you're telling me, pray to God and then take her home. Helpless, hopeless. I was on streets, I remember. Days and nights, we were begging at the doors of many medical centers, asking for one thing that is so freely available here, morphine. Sadly, India is the biggest grower of morphine. Right, Annette? It is so inexpensive. It's equal to less than 2 cents United States currency level, or 30 rupees in an Indian currency. We don't have morphine. The doctors are not prepared to prescribe morphine. The pharmacies are not prepared to stock morphine. And somehow I ended up at Karnashraya, Dr. Nagesh Sinha. And this gentleman, I was able to cut through layers and then approach him, and I said, can you please be kind enough? This is a place in Bangalore, the only place in Bangalore who looks after patients with cancer and palliative for cancer therapies, terminal illness and cancer therapies, but they don't have any other non-cancerous patients being looked after. I requested if I could bring mom to Karnashraya and requested a bed for her. And he said, we cannot because she is a non-cancerous patient. What did my mom do? She did not have cancer, but she was dying. She had incurable, irreversible health condition. She was also dying just like any other cancer patient was dying. She was in agony, she was in discomfort, she was in pain. We were all in pain. And finally, Dr. Sinha from there gave me 3 fentanyl patches. And he said, keep it as a last resort, Usha. You can use it for her when she needs it the most. We don't have a lot of supply, so you can take this. And keep trying on the other cancer centers and other places. That was it. I guess all I did was bring mommy home, spent all the money on nice waterbed, a suction unit, and a few other medications which would address symptoms such as breathlessness, catheters to drain the urine because mom was not able to get up and walk about. I remember doing ascitic tap on her. When I say ascitic tap, not apart from Red here and not many people would understand, she had large tummy fluid collecting from there. If that fluid was sitting there, she was not able to breathe, and so all I did was just to put a needle through and then drain that fluid. And so that level would come down and she would be able to breathe better. And this was all done by a doctor at home in front of other people who were screaming at. My sisters and my brother would say, how inhumane are you? You are inflicting pain. But I'm not inflicting pain, I'm trying to help mommy breathe. Keep her comfortable. We did many things like this. And to a day came when I could not stand there anymore. With 3 more patches left at hand, I had to say goodbye to mom because I knew she was going to go soon and I could not stand there anymore. I left, and mom holding onto my hand, not wanting to let go of me. She was pleading, saying, take me to a place, somewhere to care for me. Sorry. So,
I asked Usha if she would tell her story because obviously it's very painful to tell, but I think her story illustrates what's happening in India every single day to thousands and thousands of people. So, you know, we can all see just still, it's 1 year now since this all happened, is it? Or just 2 years? 2 years, and you can still see the pain and suffering that this situation inflicts on family. Now, Usha, with all her medical nursing knowledge, was able to do so much for her mother, but she's still left with this terrible grief that there was an enormous amount of unrelieved suffering. And so I think what she's doing is turning that whole terrible experience into something positive. And I guess we're all part of, you know, trying to look at how we can turn this situation around in India, because far too many people are going through a very similar, maybe even worse situation.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry, I'm back.
Do you want a glass of water?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you, Audit. Yes, so finally, Mom was left back with a few patches, and my sisters were brave enough to administer to her when she wanted. And she slept through the next 2 weeks, and in sleep, she passed away. To the point, my sister did not realize that she was gone. The day she called me, and I asked her, "How's Mom?" She said, "Oh, just a second, let me just peek in." And then she had a doubt that she was not breathing anymore. And she came up to me and, you know, she passed a message to my husband saying that actually Mom's passed away. And that's when I knew that she had gone. Now the question that kept on bothering me was, it's from many levels. As family, as consumers ourselves, what are we doing to our own kith and kin? We are putting them through such a lot of stress and strain when you know that conditions are irreversible. We are not looking for adequate or appropriate centers to go to. We do shop around for all the other kind of things, like you want to buy a sari, you want to buy a pair of shoes or jewelry or something. We go from shop to shop, shop to shop, shop to shop, seeing for the best quality, best price, best everything. When it comes to health, no one asks anyone anything. They just simply go and blindly fall at the feet of whoever that is. And there is always this expectation, cultural expectation, which is social exchange. Unless, I should be paying for the treatment. So they just go dump the person in the hospital and say, "I'm happy to pay anything and everything. Please look after, look after my mom or look after my husband or wife or whoever that is," without knowing that this probably is not the right way to go. It is futile. These treatments are not going to bring them back. Instead, we should look at the severity of the condition, try to understand, devise a management plan in conjunction with the medical team, arrive at a feasible option here, keep them comfortable, give them dignified care and dignified death. And I think since then, a lot of things have, over 2 years now since I lost my mom, I don't know how many other centers are there in Bangalore to support patients like this. When I wrote to many people soon after my mom's passing away, I had letters coming from, emails coming right, left and center, including World Health Organization, saying that, "Usha, there are 6 centers in Bangalore who are allocated to have this sort of service. You should be actually tapping these resources from them, get the service from those people." I went to every single hospital according to the address that were given to me. Every single one of them sent me back saying, "That is all in the books. It doesn't work here like that." So that is the appalling situation that was, and that is probably still a large majority of voiceless Indians are still going through this pain, and I want to be the voice for those voiceless. And I'm seeking your support to be the strength for those weak and feeble. And that was the main intent of actually coming together. And I could not have actually requested a more appropriate person to come in and speak, because for this particular evening, none other than Adet, who has been into this particular service over the last, how many years is it now, Hamrahi?
Hamrahi actually since 2009, but applied since before that, 96.
Since 96, so it's about 19, 20 years we're talking about. Australia being the second country in the in palliative health, UK being the first country which has got the highest, best quality out there, or Australians are lending their hand out there to those people back home in India. As Indians, we ourselves, being the consumers, what are we doing to that? Are we sitting back and expecting the resources from Australia to reach our people back there? What is our commitment towards that? We have come out here. If you and I get unwell, we will be taken to a medical center here, or a doctor here, or a hospital here, who will automatically put you through that circle, and they will they'll ensure that you are not going to be one of those people whom I have lost. She's only one out of who knows how many millions are on a daily basis struggling and suffering like this. We are shutting the doors to all those people. But my request is that each one of us have got a role to play. We can find our own inner strength in actually supporting that particular service. That's actually kick-started quite a while ago now, and then I will request Adet to actually give us a bit of a flow through as to what and how Adet is actually helping many countries, but India being your major part of interest. May I please request you to say a few things for us, Adet? Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. It's a delight to be here with you. Thank you, Usha, for organising this, and all the people who have supported her for organising this afternoon. And welcome to the children, front seat. I hope you enjoy this, and please ask questions. Thank you. In many respects, I think Usha has said it all, because the personal story is, as we know, echoed and amplified throughout India, and I'm sure many of you may have very similar experience, or have concerns about sort of similar experiences for your families in India. Perhaps just a very brief little bit of background about Apply, Australasian Palliative and International, and then I also want to tell you a number of stories just to illustrate some of the things that are happening in India at the moment. So, when I was a registrar in palliative care, which is a medical specialty, just like cardiology, respiratory medicine, gastroenterology, palliative medicine is also now a recognised medical specialty here in Australia, and actually also in India as of about 3 years ago. So things are changing, thank goodness. But when I was training in England, and I met a fellow registrar, Joseph O'Neill, who was starting a group called British Aid for Hospices Abroad. So their focus in England was more Eastern Europe and Africa. When I moved to Australia, we thought, let's start something similar here. The idea being that a group of Australian, initially it was palliative care doctors and nurses, but it's anybody who's interested really now. So our focus was how can we raise awareness and help to promote palliative care development in particularly low and middle income countries in our Asia Pacific region. Now there are international groups that do this also. One in particular is the Asia Pacific Hospice Network, which has its office in Singapore, and Indian colleagues are certainly part of that group. And then there's a more international group called International Association of Hospice and Palliative Care. But we thought having a local group, an Australian-centred group, might just act as a sort of stepping stone for people who want to get involved on a more international stage. People sometimes feel more comfortable about getting locally involved. So it's a conduit. So the idea initially was just to hold awareness raising things, to fundraise a little bit, to provide educational opportunities for colleagues from India and other places in Asia. They could come and do observerships. And then in 2009, at one of our Palliative Care Australia conferences, I met up with Professor Raj Gopal from Trivandrum in the south of Kerala. Are many of you from Kerala? So you know. I can never say the correct name, Trivandrum. So we've been collaborating on different things for many years, and he's a great leader and a real inspiration for many, many people. And he's visited Australia a few times. So I was saying our group isn't really doing anything very hands-on, can we do more? So he had been given money from a couple of American organisations to provide funding for training of doctors and nurses. So they would come to his centre, which is a training centre, do their 6-week course, and then they'd go back to whatever hospital they worked in, and the funding he had was included 2 years of salary for those people. So it was really to try and embed the palliative care. But what he was worried about, many of them came from North India, and he was worried that they really didn't have enough support once they went back to try and do this mammoth task, because most of them still needed to do their own job, whether it was an anaesthetist or an oncologist or whatever, plus somehow find time to establish palliative care. And we're talking about enormous hospitals with thousands of people seen every day. So, you know, really a tall order. So the idea was, could we match those new services with doctor and nurse teams from here, who would visit on a regular basis for a week or two, and kind of do the ward rounds together, see patients together, share ideas, do advocacy, do some media, whatever was required that would help to boost the service. So that's Project Hamrahi, which is fellow traveller, in Hindi, the fellow traveller. So we've been doing that now for a number of years, and that's been a great project. Very simple, low cost. Most of the doctors and nurses fund themselves, but again, it's a very mutual. We learn a lot. We learn so much, and likewise, it really boosts the morale of some of the services. So that's sort of how that's a little bit about how I've got involved. So I just want to now start to tell you some stories. And the first one, you may not be able to see very well. So in February, earlier this month, I was attended the Indian Palliative Care Conference. They have an annual conference each year. It's in a different part of India. This year it was in Pune, in Maharashtra state. And before that, I went to Delhi and visited the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, which many of you will be familiar with. It's highly regarded in India, premier institution, government institution, so free services. And Dr. Sushma Bhatnagar runs the Department of Anaesthetics there, but she also is in charge of palliative care services. And they have really established palliative care very well. I mean, apparently 20,000 people live on that All India Institute of Medical Sciences campus. So, you know, when I say very well, there's still huge work to be done, but nevertheless, they are highly regarded, highly respected. She has an enthusiastic team and a lot of cross-training between anaesthetics and palliative care, or geriatrics and palliative care. So things are developing. They do a daily outpatient session, and there was a room, probably not much bigger than the kitchen, 5 doctors working in this room, each with a patient and maybe 2 relatives with them, 1 desk with 3 doctors working around the desk. So somehow in that room there might have been 30 people, I don't know, I sort of couldn't count, but I was fascinated actually that it could still work, you know. So again, you know, we have ideas here of privacy and sensitivity, and yet there's great sensitivity, great efficiency, things worked, these people all being seen. However, this man, I'll call him the man from Bihar, so he arrived with 2 carers. The poor man could really not sit on his own. He would have fallen off the chair if he hadn't had somebody beside him to heal him. He was, many of you will know where Bihar is, on the other side of North India. So he travelled there with his companions to Ames, which has it has a mythical status. It's the beacon of hope, I suppose, for many poor patients in India. And he hoped that he was going to get some good news. Most patients who turn up have already been seen in their own state, so he came with his medical workup and his investigations and his diagnosis. I didn't get to see all the documentation, but I think everything was already explained, that he had a late-stage cancer. So he was looking for a second opinion, I suppose, and a more hopeful message. He was weak, he had renal failure, he was very swollen, ashen, and had abdominal pain. He had no symptom relief that I could tell for any of these things. So the doctors were unable to give him the news he wanted of a cure, but they were able to refer him to a hospice called Shanti Abedna, which was the first hospice to start in India, I think in the 1980s sometime. So it's been there quite early days. And I think he went there for end-of-life care. So here's a man from the other side of India, poor as can be, travelled this long distance with God knows what suffering, arrives in this room where somebody was able to at least point him in the right direction. There wasn't a lot of detailed conversation and communication, and like we would have here, you'd sit, you'd explain everything, you'd talk to the family, it'd be one-on-one, or one in the room on your own, it'd be lengthy explanations about the condition. So things are done more sort of economically, subtly maybe in India, but he was directed in the right way. So he, his story, I think, is common to thousands upon thousands of people across India now, where doctors don't seem to be able to give the right sort of communication and tell people not only the diagnosis, but what it really means for them. Now, I see stories about doctors being attacked by aggressive consumers when they're told news that people don't want. So there are aggressive consumers, but we get aggressive consumers here too. We get trained in communication skills. We get taught how to sensitively give people the information they need to then be able to plan what they need to do with the remaining time of their life, rather than this perpetual chasing of futile treatment. And maybe one of the reasons we do it better here is because we're expected to do it here, because we have the government paying for a lot of our medical care and watching how we spend our money. Whereas in India, it's the family and the patient who bear the cost. So it's hidden cost, and I don't think there's anywhere near the right amount of scrutiny about what sort of medical decisions are being made and what people are being asked to pay for. Because many patients are dying either with unbearable pain and suffering in intensive care when it's futile, or undergoing absolutely useless and costly investigations and treatments for no benefit whatsoever. So it really is overdue time to start to change what's going on in India, where clinical care needs to be much more about what's the best decision for this patient, not what's the, not based on financial gain.
As you said, it is the family's acceptance, breaking the bad news. Here, as a good doctor, you want to tell the family that they are at their end of their journey with their illness, and it's about that time that we pull back a little bit. That doctor will be beaten to death. That's the level of awareness that people have as consumers. They don't really understand. So they say, breaking the bad news, you break it properly, otherwise you will be remembered forever, or you will be gone, And that's a fear behind the medical system being open as well. And so this is where awareness, raising the awareness of these things come into as well. It's not just one-sided, it is from both sides, I guess.
No, that's right. I think there is a fear. Yeah, there is a fear.
Yeah, right.
So that's one story.
And the other thing just to mention is that we need to start to try to develop we need more effort. People have started, but we need more effort and more success in creating a comprehensive network of care, because a lot of medical care is hospital-based. So you may get reasonable treatment while you're in hospital, but here we have the ability to then refer people to community services, to GPs, to services outside of hospital. But in India, I find even the doctors who would like to provide that for patients, there's nowhere to go once the patient leaves the hospital. So that system of care. And I think for me, one of the best things about going to India is I really understand much more about how our health system here works and appreciate much more. Otherwise, we just take it for granted. But it's, it has to be established, it has to be put into place. So that continuity between hospital and home is very important. Second story. So this is a bit more positive. Again in February, before I do that. So this is one of the slides taken, one of the graphs taken from the Quality of Dying report that Usha referred to. It's an international, it's a Singapore foundation, the N Foundation, that have funded this review of, which they call the Quality of Dying. It was first done about 5 or 6 years ago. In 2015 they revised it. So the first time they looked at 40 countries, this time they've looked at 80 countries. Now in the middle of the slide you may see Asia Pacific. So as Usha said, Australia and New Zealand and Taiwan, Singapore and South Korea all do reasonably well. As soon as the income of the country starts to fall, you'll see that the quality of dying falls with it. So good palliative care services, good pain control is very closely associated with higher income countries. They use 5 or so different measures of quality of dying. We can talk more in detail if you're interested in this report. We can talk about that later. But you see India come, I think, what did they say, 26.8 ranking in this thing. So the availability of opioids is one of the significant factors in the ranking, and then also the level of education of health professionals about palliative care is one of the other factors. So, just the next one. So I don't know if you can see those. It's a shame because she has such a beautiful face, this woman. As I said, the next story was aimed to be a little more positive. So again in February, after the palliative care conference, I visited the islands of Lakshadweep, just off the coast of Kerala. And there are 36 islands, 10 of them are inhabited. They are fairly secluded. You need a permit to visit. Even if you're in India, you need a permit to visit. They're predominantly or entirely Muslim faith, and they survive on fishing and coconut industries. So quite remote in terms of their accessibility and also their development. Very simple sort of lifestyle. Now, about 3 or 4 years ago, a teacher from the main island, Kavarati Island, became very moved to do something about people who were at home and had who were suffering at home from illness. Again, there were no community services. They have hospitals on 2 or 3 of the islands, but no community care. So he got on his bike and he put a bag on his back and he started to visit a few of these patients at home, being cared for by the families. So very, very simple. And then being a teacher maybe, or being the person that he is, he started to attract people to what he was doing. He didn't know he was doing palliative care. He was responding to a need that he could see. And then he found out about Pallium India in Trivandrum, and he found out this word palliative care. And a couple of people came to help him, a doctor and a nurse from the main hospital on Kabarati Island. And they went off for 6 weeks training, and then they've come back. So they're the sort of core team. But he's also attracted a whole lot of other people from the community. So now he has something like 70 volunteers, and he has 300 friends who will pledge. I think they only pledge 1,000 rupees a year, but through that he raises some money. And they provide air mattresses, and they provide dressings, and they provide medications, and they visit. They all do their day job, and then they come afterwards, and they do a couple of hours visiting people in their homes. They provide psychosocial support to the families. You know, the expectation there in this community is that the ill person will be cared for at home 24 hours, 7 days, whether they are, paraplegic. There was one young man who had a very severe brain injury. He had a breathing tube, he had a feeding tube in his nose, he had his limbs, he couldn't move on his own, pressure area. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, he's at home with his family. But it is an extended family, and I guess that goes back to what you were talking about too, is, things are changing in India, as you know much better than I do. The families' structure is changing. Families are maybe smaller, more educated, more families have children overseas, all of that, and it's having its impact on this aspect of healthcare as well. But in this island, it's still a little bit more traditional.
And sorry, they share the same drug policy from India, is that right?
They do, yeah. They do. In fact, they may have an advantage because they come directly under central government control. Their governance is from Delhi, this group of islands. So, given that Delhi is where the law has changed, it may. And actually, this volunteer group have been registered as a registered medical institution, so they're able to stock and supply and administer morphine. So this little group of backward islands is actually more advanced than many other parts of India and many other cancer centres in India that still don't have oral morphine or other opioids available to patients. So
it's very interesting to see that there is that letting go of the patients from the medical centres once when the treatment is futile. That's very interesting to see. You're talking about Lakshadweep, which is a little island in comparison to the massive place in India, where people are being held towards the hospital system and they don't let go of them, even though they know that they are not going to be treated and cured. They keep them back, giving them the false hope.
It's very complex that. Some of it is driven by the family, but some may be also driven by financial gain, I'm not sure. But some is also driven by doctors not knowing what else to do. It's very, very multifaceted.
We'll be very interested.
It happens here too. Well, I think we are at fault in Australia as well for continuing to treat beyond a point where perhaps there's real benefit. And we're not talking about giving up on people or not giving people every opportunity for cure or for getting better, but it's just recognising when that is not happening or when our efforts to do that are starting to actually backfire and we're making people worse and causing more suffering. That when like any medical treatment, if you get the wrong drug or the wrong operation or you're going to do harm. Likewise, if you're giving the wrong type of care, if you're giving acute care when you need more chronic or palliative care, you're likely to do harm. You're treating with the wrong approach. And we even have studies now that show that if patients with metastatic lung cancer who some were given standard care, oncology care, the drugs, the treatment, etc. Some were given that plus early palliative care. Though that second group actually lived longer. And the thought was that they probably had fewer hospitalisations, less time in hospital, less chance of infection, less intensive therapies, and they actually lived longer. So most people think when you talk about palliative care, you're talking about dying, end of life. That's old way of thinking, and it's care of the family as well, good equipment that should be in place, somebody to call if there's a problem. It's a different approach. And at times it may mean a hospitalisation for if there's a fall or if there's radiotherapy required, but that's a pattern. Okay, I won't go into it. So I just want to I thought I'd tell the story of Palliative because, one, we talk a lot about quality of life in palliative care, and that's what it's supposed to be about. In our Western thinking, quality of life is very much about me and autonomy. This lady had a severe lung condition. She required oxygen all the time. She was sitting on the back porch of her family, sort of one of the homes on the family property. There were a few ducks wandering around. There was some sort of business going on in the back. I don't know exactly what. There were people wandering around. She was there. She was smiling. She was content. She had severe physical frailty, but she was still part of this family. She wasn't, in another institution. She wasn't. So quality of life is also about relationships, and is often very dependent on the people around us and the people we cherish and how we are in our relationships. Not so much just about how I am in myself. So quality of life, we have to be very careful with the concept, because we can look at somebody else's life and think, I wouldn't like to be like that. I don't want to live like I wouldn't. That seems like there's no quality there, and yet the quality could be about how I take care of that person and how we can continue to treat this person in all their physical frailty as the person they always were. So I think I learnt about that when I was in Lakshadweep, because I think I could see that happening just in a very normal, everyday sort of way. The other thing, bear in mind that palliative care is for all of us to do. It's not just for me as a doctor or Usha as a nurse. It's all of us. And I think we've been at fault in maybe the more developed countries. We've made it a bit like all of healthcare, it's for the professionals. Whereas we can only do a small amount. When we visited a family at home, we're just there for half an hour or an hour. The rest of the time it's the family. And we have to be careful we don't lose the capacity to care. Home is where most of the care takes place. So, and just thirdly, the third story. Sorry, that's a picture of all the volunteers of one of the new centres I've established, getting one of their pep talks from Mulana. Inspires them, not just actually in palliative care, it's also telling them to clean up the island, to grow organic food. So it's a whole social movement, really.
Do you want me to go to the slides?
Thank you. So finally, this is about opioid availability. So the man in the middle, in the larger photo, 24 hours before we saw him, this is in Patna, in Bihar, at a major hospital there. He was miserable. He couldn't smile, and his very respectful carer, didn't want to challenge the doctors, but still felt that he had to say something, that he was suffering. We found morphine in the hospital. 24 hours later, this is him. So he's sitting up, he's smiling, he's very grateful, he's pain relieved. Small amount of morphine, something similar to Panadine, 4 times a day or something. So we're not talking big doses, and we're not talking about using drugs that make people somnolent and confused. Talking about the right dose, the right drug, intelligent prescribing. So, but in order to do that, it's like I was saying before, so many things need to be in place. We need a doctor who's prepared to write the order. We need a stock and supply department who are prepared to make sure that they don't run out and don't leave a piece of paper somewhere and all of a sudden you've got no morphine anymore. So you start, and I saw many examples of that. You start someone on morphine and then the supply runs out. So from going from good pain relief, they're back in terrible pain. And it might go on for 2 or 3 months before the supply comes back again. It's just unacceptable. So you need a supply department that think this is an important part of their job. You need a designated person who's willing to keep all the accounts of how many tablets have been dispensed and how many are still there and how many more they have in supply. We have a pharmacy, a whole pharmacy department to do that, and a stores department. This fell to one nurse who was already full-time working in an outpatient department as a neurology nurse, but in the kindness and compassion that she had, she took on this job of monitoring opioids. And then, of course, given the whole concern about opioids, she was putting her neck out really, because if one tablet went missing, it would be on her shoulders. And then you need a way of prescribing, and then you need to have the actual drugs available. So that's within an institution. Then you have to do the whole country. Now, there are some good news stories about morphine and opioids in India, and I'll talk about that. But it's not easy to bring about change. Some people from outside think, why doesn't India sort this out, But if you don't have all these systems in place, it's a really large task, and it's taken 20 years to change the 1985 Narcotics, Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act that was enforced in India, and since then opioid availability has gone backwards enormously. And it's taken 20 years of dogged advocacy by so many people, palliative care, non-palliative care, but certainly Raj Gopal, I mentioned before, has been a real advocate, to finally bring about an amendment which has simplified things from needing what they previously needed 4 licenses. You need a license to make the thing, then a license to stop it, and a license to take it from one state to another, and a license to prescribe it. So all my colleagues, they would say, by the time you get your 4th license, your first license is expired and you're back to the start. So it's just prohibitive. So that's all changed. Now in 2014, we should have all been celebrating in the streets. I know Mr. Modi was here, but we should have been celebrating in the streets when this changed, because finally we had a chance. Now it's one single license. So all of a sudden in India we have a chance. So now we need the will to implement what can flow from that change, to get doctors educated, to get patients aware that they have a right to pain management, and to get hospital administrations to take it as a priority. They shouldn't be doing CT scans and PET scans and cutting edge stuff unless they have this in place. This is a basic. It's criminal that they don't have this in place. Absolutely unacceptable, and I wish we'd all get out in the streets and batter down the Indian embassy door and say, you've got to do, this is disgusting.
Thank you, Odette, and that is where
It's
partially
disgusting.
coming from, as gathering mass.
Yeah.
One thing that we had, we had a chat with the Shadow Minister for Jobs here in Victoria, Craig Ondarche, and we did raise this, and he was leading the health sector for one of the hospitals, Austin Hospitals, not too long ago, about 3 years ago. He was still in charge of it. And so I was talking to him about the discrepancy of, production and supply. We are the largest producers when we say India. And then we export about 80% of it to Australia or to America, New Zealand, and places like that. And we retain only 20% of it there. While 80% of the population really need it. And the reason why they don't retain is, one is non-profitable industry, because pharmacies are not making much money out of it, whereas fentanyl is a derivative, and they are making that. That's because they are getting more money out of it. And so that is directly vested in the hands of the government, right? And so this is where I was thinking, as a commoner, as a public, we don't really have a lot of say in it. And so unless we gather as a whole mass and then go hit their door hard and say, we want this. We want this change to happen.
I think we do have to,
yes,
as a community.
And so this is where Craig was saying that let us see if we can make this awareness come through first, and then we can move towards that political move, and then see what can come out of that.
All right. I'm nearly finished. I think it shows.
Sure.
This is what
Would you like me to change the?
Yeah, I think so. So apologies for getting too het up, and for the negative stories. There are some positive stories. Developments are happening. So the amendment to the Act definitely is a fantastic breakthrough. The medical and nursing education is happening. There is now a medical specialty, palliative care in India, and Tata Memorial in Bombay have had this going now for 2 or 3 years. Unfortunately, there's only 2 people per year, so very, very slow. And AIMS has also just started, I think, this year. So again, they only have 2 or 3 people. So that's for the sort of real specialty 3-year experienced doctors and newcomers. They can be 1 week, 10 days, 6 weeks, they're all different levels. And for medical and nursing and other specialties. So they run through Palliative India and Trivandrum, but also through the Indian Association for Palliative Care, and all the institutions have stepped forward to do that. There is a National Palliative Care Strategy as of 2012. There are many volunteer movements that we've been talking about. The south of India has always been very fortunate. They've had a couple of the centres there, the one in Trivandrum and then another one in Calicut. Kozhikode. Both of them are WHO collaborating centres. Both of them are, the one in Kozhikode is very exemplary because it has a great community network happening. So they have achieved almost complete coverage of the northern part of Kerala with palliative care, so real success stories. And again, they really use the community sort of resource there very, very well. There are collaborations like Intensive Care, Specialty Society and Palliative Care. They are working together now and looking at how they can develop guidelines and policies and have a united voice about improving end-of-life care. And there's this big end-of-life care collaboration where they're trying to do a bit of research on end-of-life care across all of India. They've done a survey, and I've forgotten the details of it. And then Wales, Cardiff University in Wales have recently released a e-learning palliative care modules for health professionals, so people can do that online. It's free, and it's India focused. It's got Indian specialists who are teaching on that online module. They had done one for Africa, and now they've done this one for India. So definitely there's progress, but still 1.2 billion people. I say 15% of the need for palliative care exists just in India alone. So if we could do something in India, we'd be doing something for the world at large. It's just one more, I think. And so again, just adding the sort of adding to this advocacy, adding to the authority of this advocacy is that the World Health Assembly in 2014 for the first time really put its voice to the importance of palliative care. So they published this document, Strengthening of Palliative Care as a Component of Integrated Treatment Across the Life Course. And then also it's one of the WHO sustainable goals for healthcare that palliative care should be available. One more, I keep saying one more, but there's just the very last slide. Is the language I like is that it's the health system platform. As I was saying before, we're doing CTs and we're doing PET scans and we're doing all sorts of cutting edge stuff, but we haven't got our foundation in place. We need to sort of take a step back maybe and make sure that that foundation of care is in place, and then we can develop the rest of our care. So a fundamental global policy, and one to which we're all challenged to work in unison. Thank you very much. Again, my apologies if I became a bit heated, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. I'm sure you have enlightened a lot of us with quite a lot of insight into what goes on there, apart from the sad story that I conveyed and I shared with you. I'm pretty sure there were a few emails that came across to me asking, so why are you asking us to come here? What do you want us to do? Are there any hands here sharing that question?
What do you want me to ask that question? Can you please describe palliative care, I can understand the cardiology,
Thank you.
gastro, things like that. If you could explain to us a little more, it would be better.
Please. So the WHO definition is that palliative care is care for people with life-threatening illness that involves assessment and management of symptoms, good communication, clarifying goals of care, doesn't aim necessarily to prolong life, but also does not aim to shorten life. It's not euthanasia, it's not assisted suicide, so it respects life. But its focus is improving the quality of life rather than, and its focus on the person and the family with the illness rather than on the illness itself. A lot of medical development has been on more disease and what, so this is more going back to the patient with the condition and what's the impact of the condition on this patient and how can we help this patient family through this final phase of their life. Does that answer the question?
But most of the conditions, as we say, like, please. Most of the conditions, whether it is cancer of lung or a head injury, and following a massive traffic accident, road traffic accident, or whatever that is, it all entails, or it all has similar symptoms, such as pain is one thing which you cannot run away from any illness as a result of any illness, right? So pain is a major problem that all patients with either acute illness or terminal illness complain of. Palliative care does answer that symptom very promptly, and that is what Odette was talking about. There is no need to go into all sophisticated treatment and monitoring and care, hi-fi care, while the pain is not being addressed. Palliative care does address that as the most important.
And we're not,
exactly.
Yeah, we're not talking about either or. At the early days, the idea was you'd have acute care treatment until there was nothing else to be offered, and then you'd get referred to a palliative care service for the final days, weeks, months, whatever it was. Now the idea is that the two go along hand in hand. Because a person can turn up with early stage cancer but with quite severe pain because it might be pushing on some structure or whatever. So it's what are the symptoms, what is the need, and it includes psychosocial symptoms, so distress, anxiety, depression, all of that as well, not just physical. And we work hand in hand. I work in a cancer centre, so I work with my oncology colleagues. But, the palliative care need in India, about a sixth of it is due to cancer. The rest is, or maybe a fifth, the rest is non-malignant and HIV/AIDS. So people live with heart disease and respiratory disease, renal disease for many years, it can be 5, 10 years even. And there may be times during those years where the palliative care service may become involved for some particular complication, help with managing pain or other symptom, nausea, whatever, cough, breathlessness. And then if everything's steady, they may pull back, and then the main specialist continues, and then the palliative care service might become involved again down the track. So it's really part of the whole team now. And also, a lot of it is what should be a core skill base for all doctors and all nurses and everyone. So a specialist service might just need to get involved in a more complex, difficult. But we're really pushing the message that this is what all health professionals should be learning and be able to do up to some level. Does that answer the question?
Any other questions? I know there are millions.
So what is involved in the process of what we're saying now?
What you can do?
What people can do.
What are you inspired to do?
I'm a pharmacist, so I know
Oh, there you
it's
are.
all about
What do you think you can do?
I'm just amazed that pharmacists, like, morphine can be produced there
Yep.
and not be administered, and all this bureaucracy, it's part of that is a disaster.
I mean, it's fascinating that many of the main hospitals in India don't have an on-site pharmacy. I couldn't quite understand that. Again, something we take so much for granted.
The
here.
private hospitals have big money in
The
pharmacy.
private ones,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
but the public ones don't. They might have a tiny little shop
Even
somewhere
public
on the
hospitals do
campus.
have, in Bangalore, if I can recollect, Victor, correct me if I'm wrong, Jwala, she is a renal consultant from Bangalore Kidney Foundation sitting there. So we've got major hospitals in Bangalore with inbuilt pharmacies in there. However, medications of any sort are not available. Patients are given a list of things: 19-gauge needle, dressing pack, cefataxin, pain medications, this and that and the other. The parent who comes there or the visitor who comes there to look after the patient does not have time to spend the quality time with the patient. He only has, or he or she only has time to go and purchase this medication and bring across. And they have a pharmacy right there, but they don't stock all these medications. Again, coming back to...
So where do they get them?
They go outside pharmacies, and they have to buy it from outside pharmacies. And some of the pharmacies do stock it and some of them don't. And again, morphine is something that is essential, is meant to be there in every hospital, but they don't.
It has to be a registered medical institution.
Yes,
so
to have that.
And then to be that, you have to have a doctor who, at least one doctor there who's had training in palliative medicine. And I think it's still being determined what that training needs to be, whether it's
You might be worried about overdose and things like that.
well, they are, and the medical textbooks in the 1960s and 70s all talked about the dangers of morphine.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
the problem is, you know, we have a lot more experience now, and yes, there are dangers, but there's danger with every drug. You know, every antihypertensive out there can kill us.
It's a cultural issue, I think, it's quality of life and how pain is it.
And it
That's
goes
the biggest
back to
thing,
the
challenge
social
for
stigma
education in
about
India.
morphine and
Very
It's about what it is. It's a cultural issue.
Very
They don't understand it.
Very true. Very true. So there's a lot of awareness that we need to
raise.
start to raise within the consumers. I'm not talking about the people or the nursing or the healthcare system, but as consumers ourselves, we have to improve our level of awareness, knowledge, and so that probably answers, you know, to an extent, fighting with that.
Maybe we can have a chat about how you might get involved, or I mean,
Yeah.
certainly we would love people to join Apply, and then we get newsletters, and you get the website, and you get updates, and maybe start to connect opportunities to come and do some hands-on things.
Sorry, Lavita.
You did mention that everything is out of the hospital.
Sorry.
It is all through the government funding. Why can't the Indian government do the same thing? They're also collecting taxes.
Too big.
They also got fund, they also got people who are dying.
It's a good question.
Maldistribution or misdistribution or whatever you would like to call, that goes only to the filthy rich, doesn't go to...
Politicians must be attacking it.
That's right. So
Well, at the Indian conference, they had someone from the government, and he was stressing that there really is a will now in the government to change. I don't know if it's the will to fund all the dedication, I don't know, but in terms of policy and getting the opioids available and encouraging the states to change their processes and so forth,
I think
So
the main
we-
change in the Psychotropic Act was a big move
Big,
step forward.
was.
The people are caught up in the whole thing.
big.
If you address the
It was
issue,
a great
yeah.
excuse too.
Exactly.
I mean, it
That's a
may
big
have been
change.
real, but it was also it was too hard. It
So
was
maybe a
great.
write-up
But maybe-
with a lot of people signing for what you would like to see happen.
Some of the politicians
So-
take that and win the elections.
That's right.
I mean,
Actually, you want to say yes, Dhanuja? Sorry.
For those of us who are not in the medical profession, how can we help? I mean, there's a lot of things I don't understand in terms of the care and all that sort of stuff. So how can we help those, you know, what do you expect us to do from here? Just to be sort of clear.
Do you have something you want to say first?
I'll let you speak.
I mean, I think the first step is just becoming aware, and you've taken that step. Come here and you're asking the right question now. How can I get involved? It's not like there's. I would say if you can join Apply, that's one way. So we always need funding because we use that funding to then provide observerships to bring to fund the nurses to go over on this Hamrahi project. Maybe in time we might be able to, if there's enough interest, we might be able to host more people to come over here. Maybe you can
For a
provide a
fundraising.
home for them,
get involved in fundraising, advocacy to your embassy or to your members of parliament, or if you have people back in India, that's the other thing I meant to say, that you think can have some influence, write into them, write into your, which part of India. If you're from Kerala, there's already a lot of work being done there, but you could write are you from Kerala? Background? No.
I'm sure.
Writing to the minister or the Minister of Health from the state that you feel most connected to, and asking what's happening as a result of the change in the Act. Those sorts of things. I think they're practical.
Is there a network from India? I know that Dr. Raj is doing a great job there at this point in time.
Yep.
Is there a network that he has created which can then disseminate this sort of care to the rest of India? Like, most of us are from Chennai, Bangalore.
Okay.
Is there any way, what are their
Look,
links?
there are, yes, so Palliative India works predominantly in terms of service provision in Trivandrum and surrounding, and they have amazing, they are a more than a healthcare provider. They take the health as more than just the physical body, so they will look after the family. So if the father of the family is the breadwinner and he's sick and can't earn, they will pay for the schooling for the children to continue at school, or they will have food supplies, so they'll assess level of need, and the most needy families, they will provide that sort of very practical support, so they obviously need financial. They also run a children's, because children get cancer and terminal illness as well, so they run these fantastic children's outings several times a year, and they'll take them either to the beach or they have some sort of, and they also give out toys and so forth. So there are those sort of things. Now, as far as their role beyond, they do education all the time. Every 8 weeks they have a 6-week course, and then they have a 2-week gap and another. And those people come from all over India for that course. They're not the only centre. There are many other centres around India that are doing similar things. But now the one that I have the most connection with, and probably are the most established one. So it might be worth Googling Palliative India and just seeing what you see on their website.
Just to follow on the fundraising side, is there any fundraising happening here?
Look, I'm the world's absolutely worst when it comes to fundraising. I talk about it a lot, but I do nothing. So one idea, yes, if anyone's good at that, I'll sign you up.
I was reaching out for the great person, the source for this to happen today, Subbu. He is well known to be actually, creating such sort of forums and those sort of things. And I'm sure Subbu will come up with great ideas for fundraising events.
We could form
We
an
could have,
group
and there is this gentleman who's standing there, the voice of India, as far as entertainment is concerned. He has got a troupe behind him. I'm being one of them, and there's another person there. And so we could have a fundraising evening, with music and whatever that is.
Positive, this is about celebrating life, quality of life. It's not about death specifically. It's about, something positive, really.
Professor, I was a fantastic effort at your experience, and in countries like third world countries, Sri Lanka, India, it takes ages to implement
So we have to be
any of
patient.
these. So you have to be, and you are very patient, and you are seeing fantastic results now. But I think we just need to keep continuing on that journey.
Perseverance.
This is just the beginning.
Second thing is, I have a question. WHO, UNO, whether they have got influence in this service.
They do. And now, after this 2014 World Health Assembly, they actually now have a dedicated palliative care office. They used to have it as cancer and palliative care in WHO. So they are, they've always been one of the key, and always at the Indian conference there's always someone from WHO or one of the several people from these international groups who talk about needs analysis, and there's another group based in New York called Human Rights Watch. They publish something, you can find that on the internet. It's quite, they what's it, India, Unbearable Pain or something. So they visited many parts of India and written this. But that's, 2009 or 2010, so things have moved on a little bit. At that time, the opioid law hadn't changed, and there was
and the
sense of desperation.
there are things like feedback or get hold of some of the political leaders or in India to write massive articles like petitions and so on through some of the well-known organizations.
Have you heard of Rachel Gawanda? He's an Indian origin surgeon based in New York.
Right.
And he's written, what's it called? He was very senior, chief medical officer in the States or something. He had this very high profile. But again, I think through his own experience with his father's illness, he really started to focus on end-of-life care. So he's done TED Talks and a lot of media, written a couple of books. He's given a new authority to this whole area as well, because in palliative care we're always sort of seen as a bit sort of low down in the pecking order, that he's somebody up in that level of status.
Yes.
So he's a good person to have a look at, but it's not quite what you would do.
Yeah, and my second suggestion would be, Usha, maybe we have sponsor a child and sponsor a this and that. Why don't we start something like sponsor a patient?
Could we have either sponsor a patient or sponsor a centre?
Yeah. I mean, by sponsoring a patient, you are essentially supporting that family. As you said, if that patient were to be the breadwinner of the family who's got a terminal illness or a cancer, essentially their life comes to an end.
And I would know through Palliative India, through a group in Chennai, 2 or 3 groups in one in Pondicherry, Bangalore. We could have. We don't have to focus it all on Palliative India, but we could set that up so that they can.
That's a very nice thought as well. Yeah.
So,
and you can see in Lakshadweep they're asking 1,000 rupees, which is what is it? $20. $20.
yeah.
So you see what a difference it can make. We're not talking about thousands of dollars here. If you can commit $100 a year or $50 a year or whatever it is, and it's targeted to the heart.
That's my 2 visits to temple in a week. $20.
Right.
In a week.
So 3 cups of coffee.
Well, I was going to say that was in the list as well. And so if people are so religiously attending temples and then having the heart to donate $20 and $50 on a monthly basis, I think it's time to think.
Really later Usha, for the depression patients, if they don't visit temple, they need someone to take money.
That's right.
There's a very good reason why. Is Yeah. I know. We do need to. We do need to have. That has to be taken care of.
Yeah.
So lovely thoughts that we need to, form a group, and there has to be a core, committee or who wants to put their hand up, and then we can look at, pitching in your thoughts, and then let us see where we are heading with that.
So we've got advocacy, fundraising, maybe holding some sort of event.
Yeah.
Joining a choir.
Fun run.
Fundraising.
Yes, absolutely, we could do
And
that.
an afternoon bake.
Yeah, something positive.
And raise funds that way.
So,
Beautiful.
Lovely,
I
beautiful.
think
Thank
we
you,
just need
Tanuja.
to formulate
Lovely,
these ideas and then come up with some action plan.
fantastic.
Okay.
You can
Thank you.
put me as a volunteer.
Thank you kindly. There is, yes, Vishnu.
This is organization, Australian government approved, because recently the Chennai floods
Yeah,
was trying to collect money and send to people.
yep.
Somebody came and said it's illegal before they collect.
Yeah.
Correct.
We are an association. Apply.
If I go and ask for
That's very true. That's very true.
We are an association, but we're trying to get our charitable status organised. It's taking a bit of time. So if anyone's got skills in getting charitable status, these are sort of the time-consuming, practical things that help a lot, actually. But my husband is he and I have been sort of running the thing. We've now got the new chair who's based in Perth, Neil Tandon, but my husband's still involved with the charitable status
So
application.
should we use an existing organisation that's already established? Or
It depends. I mean, we're established as an association, like a, apply as an incorporated association. But I think if we're wanting to get real fundraising, we recognise we should have charitable status. So one organisation I know of is Shanti Foundation, which is focused on, it's a Sri Lankan group. So one of our previous registrars was of Sri Lankan background, and he's gone off and set up a similar group to apply, but focused on Sri Lanka, and they've been very successful with their fundraising. Actually, they've raised hundreds of thousands
Speaking
of
of Sri
dollars.
Lanka, Craig is from Sri Lanka.
Is he?
Yes, Craig Ondati is from Sri Lanka. And the suggestion from Craig last week or a couple of weeks was that we have a similar gathering for people on Northwest in Melbourne. A lot of them from Epping and Point Hook, and those areas had shown interest in actually wanting to listen to this and then to see what it is and what they can do. And so Craig's way of looking at it was that once when we have substantial number of people coming forward and then saying, I would like to stand in there, as Kanan said, I would like to, as a volunteer, yes, he would be able to create that status for us, Vishnu.
Yeah, the status, because
Yes, well, if we do need to have something, we need to have a structure.
And then somebody raised this question, I said, I didn't want to get into trouble.
Yeah.
Did you give back the money?
I money for what I collected.
That's-
Unfortunately, we have government regulations here.
Yeah.
But they say
yeah.
you can do a fundraising like a dinner dance or anything, raise money for that. That's not a charity commission.
Lovely.
We
Yeah.
can
confirm on that.
fundraise.
Lovely, yeah.
We can fundraise as a client, but it's just that we can't give you tax deductibility until we get charitable status.
So we can then work towards that to see how exactly we can apply for that and get that
They say
status.
even just collecting for charity.
Yeah, no, we can do
not
that.
as
We can do
regular.
that now.
Yeah.
Individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Another question. How was your experience about in India with hospitals and doctors? Are they receptive to your palliative care? Because I think many doctors will say, what is this? I'm doing a good job for 30 years and you're suddenly coming and putting things in that means you've not done a good job earlier or something like that.
Right.
The resistance of
You've got to be very careful, and especially with the language barrier and all the sort of respect and hierarchy and women and men and all of that, you have to be very careful. I think what we've found is that if we go, what we're doing more with Humphrey now is going with an Indian colleague and doing the teaching together. That helps a lot with the language. But the younger generation a bit more open, the older generation a little bit more, it's more sensitive, it's harder to change, it's harder to be challenged with, as you say, I've been doing this for 30 years and who are you to tell me that I've been doing the wrong thing?
especially the established big hospitals.
That's right. No, it's tricky. But I mean, mostly we're invited, we only go if we're invited somewhere, and then the palliative care person at that hospital will set up the medical meeting, and so I suppose there might be a bit of selection of people who come, maybe the people who might be interested. Time?
Alright, we're just looking at
Somebody else here.
Oh, sorry. Did you? Sorry,
So
Suresh.
I was just going to ask, in India there are a lot of problems in many different sectors. Even in the healthcare sector, if you see, do you think the palliative care section has actually been sort of got a stepmotherly treatment from the government, or is it just a continuation of problems that you see in all other health sectors?
I'm not sure if I quite. So you're saying that there are many problems.
So in healthcare,
yes.
we are talking about the issues specifically related to palliative care. I'm just asking, do you see more problems in the palliative care compared to other problems in the health sector? Or is it just a continuum that...
No, very good question. I think palliative care is much, much newer. Most of the other specialty areas, people know about them now. So I think palliative care is newer. And also, it's like when you ask what is it seems so obvious.
Yeah.
It doesn't sort of sound exciting, cutting edge. It just seems so obvious.
I didn't think it was a medical life initially it came here. I thought it's some side thing, stuff like radiology,
think, why are we having to talk about this? Surely this is just part of healthcare.
Anything new will always have a barrier.
True.
And slowly when it gets disseminated and
And when you see it in practice, it makes a lot more sense than when you talk about it. And it is different. I suppose the thing that we have, the resource intensive thing, we don't have big machines and so on, but we need quite a bit of time. So a lot of doctors, that's their
awareness has to come.
Shall we take a quick coffee break? Is that alright? Please, ladies and gentlemen, help yourself.
हम जब होंगे 60 साल के और तुम होगी 55 की, बोलो प्रीत निभाओगी ना तब भी अपने बचपन की।
लंबी सी इस जिंदगी में तुमको ऐश कराऊंगा, तुम मुझे लूटना जब तुमको गरम रोटी खिलाऊंगा।
क्या तुम रोटी पकाओगे?
मैं तो जीवन धारा में हर रोज तुम्हें ऐश कराऊंगा और फिर तुमको देख देख कर बार बार मुस्काऊंगा।
हम जब होंगे 60 साल के और तुम होगी 55 की।
आप 60 के हों या 70 के, आपका कल आज से बेहतर होना चाहिए, क्योंकि जिंदगी है जीने के लिए।
अनीता कितना काम करोगी? थोड़ा आराम कर लो।
आराम का प्लान तो बना लिया है मैंने। वर्ल्ड टूर पे भी जाएंगे, लेट नाइट शोज भी देखेंगे और जितना मर्जी उतना सोएंगे।
अच्छा, पर कैसे?
हमारे रिटायरमेंट की तैयारी तो शुरू कर दी है, वरना एक हाउसवाइफ का रिटायर होना तो मुश्किल है।
तो आज ही शुरू कीजिए लंबी इनिंग्स की तैयारी।